then.
Oh, dude, they're really good. Yeah, they got to win today. I don't think they've lost. Maybe they lost the Chinese Taipei. No, it's all international. Oh, Aruba lost the Chinese Taipei because I wanted Connecticut to play Aruba. I love that island in the championships, but Aruba has lost. I think they play later. But yeah, Connecticut right now is undefeated, but they scored 8 runs in the 5th inning the other day. They really turn it on, but it is wild to see one of our teammates with kids in this thing and getting some noise. And, I haven't seen or heard from Taxi in years, but clearly they're doing something right if the boys are staying out of trouble and getting into sports. So,
right. What age group is that?
I think it's 12, 12U. In fact, one of the kids, I don't know if he's on Connecticut's team, but a 10-year-old made this catch in the outfield, and they said that's the youngest kid in the Little League World Series. I know you can't be older than 12. Wow. But, yeah, and it's got to be local. Oh, it looks like it's raining there, too. Yeah, it is. It feels like fall for sure, dude. I mean, it's end of August, but it is just, when that smell is in the air, man, football begins, and it's like, dude, I just hope we have a nice fall. But let's see.
Yeah, I was watching the Yankee game last night, and it was a 2-hour delay in Florida.
Hey, and I don't want to interrupt, but I'm our co-host here. We've been live for 1:37. So let me interrupt real quick our banter. Fresh, are you with us, Fresh?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, brother. Well, I am today's host of Broker Than You, Laban Marsh, and our co-host, or the hostess with the mostest, the greatest podcast host in the universe, Steve Cawley, is somehow multitasking. He set this thing to live, and then I just read a text. So we were talking there for an hour. We all said good stuff. And then I don't have his breakdown, for all the sponsors, but hopefully he'll chime in with some of that. But we do have James Whitfield with us from Luther James Insurance. Good to have you back.
Thank you.
Nedvonne Young with FreshFold Laundry, and then Razul Wallace with House of Changes, and my man up in Connecticut. So they must have heard us talking. I've got on my big screen here the Connecticut Little League World Series. It's 10 days of just everyday games at 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, something like that. It's sports, bro. Yeah. But we were also talking, and I don't know if he started it before we talked about you wearing a sweatshirt, and it's getting into that season where I had to cancel my last night of pole vault at the zoo because we're getting rain and the sun is not coming out to dry us out. And it feels like, even though it's August, middle of August, it feels like fall is right around the corner. And so for us, in real estate, and I don't know if this is true for you, Razul, or Nedvonne, you guys down in the Carolinas don't feel the same weather seasonality. But with it being a surge, our kids don't start school until next Tuesday, the 26th. Have any of you guys started school, your kids? Or the high school started?
My kids start on Monday, the 25th.
My kids 26.
Okay. Okay, so it's coming up for a lot of people, but we tell, especially sellers who are wondering why, there hasn't been much activity or showings on their homes. It's people are getting in the last of their vacation before school starts. But then inevitably what happens for us after Labor Day, with the weather still being nice, it kicks back in. And so we get busy again, which, my daughter's a senior. The volleyball season begins officially next Thursday. So we're getting in the swing of things, but I don't know about you guys. For me, and maybe it's my concussions, the head trauma, but I love routine. I think it's good for kids too. You know what I mean? Just to keep that something to look forward to, understanding. I think it's, especially once we get the school started, sleep patterns and stuff like that. But how do you guys all handle these seasonal changes? Because I know for me, it's almost like a depressive thing that, again, I worry about my head trauma because I'm super optimistic. I love living each day to the fullest. But you get days like this where it's a little dreary. You're getting ready to make transitions, planning for what, I missed a call from the bus garage. So, it's just switching to a new schedule has always been a bit of a challenge for me, but you kind of I think it's like jet lag. You just kind of power through it. And once you get into that new routine again, it seems a little bit easier. But am I crazy, or how do you guys feel about that?
No, I find that I haven't traditionally been a routine person, but
really
over the past year, I mean, the only routine that I was really good with was like working out, right? That was the only. But in the past few years, I've been a lot more conscious of it and like kind of building my schedule that way. And it does, it gives you a lot more peace. You know, I think I have to be more intentional about creating it. So I'm going to try to get into, because it's going to change now with the kids going back to school, right?
Right.
I think I'm going to have to be a lot more intentional about it so that we don't kind of get into the swing of this new routine, you know, come Christmas break and then
and then it changes again.
It changes. Yeah. So I feel you on the routine. It seemed boring in the past, like, oh, that's gonna make things dull, but it actually gives you a lot more peace of mind, and like
because you're out of your hair for a couple hours.
Yeah, but I mean, and I'm not good. If you ask me what I'm doing in 2 or 3 weeks, like it stresses me out because I know I'm busy and I feel like I'll have something going on. But when you commit to it and then it gets to that event, you're like, oh man, what was I worried about? I knew I'd make time for this. So I think sometimes when we're busy and we like to be busy, it is hard to kind of plan out, because I always hear people say, oh, I sat down and planned for the years. Like, bro, that stresses me out. I don't even know what I have to do tomorrow necessarily because I haven't finished today. So, and I think there's something to be said for short-term goals and then those long-term goals. But it just in the routine. And again, I'm all for change. I am not opposed to change, right? But even with change, you find that routine, that rhythm. Like anytime I've been given a task, I love finding the most efficient way to do it. And then when you reflect in hindsight on how you got there, like that's where I love the journey. I love the process of figuring out how I know what works for me. Like I am not a morning person. Like and again, some people can't control it in their work life, but like my sales meetings don't begin before 9:30 because I have, whether it's school year to get the kids off or just get myself going. So again, I don't mind a change in the routine, but I do like to get into a fairly regular routine and I think part of it is so I don't have to think about what I have to do too. You know what I mean? That concussion where you're worried about you're missing something or was I supposed to do something? That's where I say I live by my calendar and my tasks, because otherwise I just will completely forget to do it, which is even worse. But Fresh, how about you? Are you a routine guy or are you more spontaneous and fly by the seat of your pants?
No, it's routine. I think, especially with even though we're the adults, the kind of the kids kind of dictate your a lot of your schedule, and you kind of have to have a routine because it's they kind of fall into a routine just with kind of like school or whatever they have going on, and then you kind of make adjustments in accordance to that, just in terms of like regular everyday life. So from a business perspective, yeah, it's definitely routine. I would say better at some things than others, but definitely try to live by the calendar, try to keep meetings, be mindful of people's time and my time. So I'm definitely, I would say routine. And but I would say I do, because of the things that I do have some flexibility to kind of be able to maneuver if need be, which is one of the benefits of being a entrepreneur, business owner.
Well, and I agree. And I think that's where when you talk, and we've talked about partnerships, whether it's a spouse or just a business partner, having that understanding of what that business life is like also matters. And I tell my kids, like, if you want to be in business, in my wife's world of mortgage, like she's in the office at 8:30, doesn't even leave her desk sometimes till 6:30 in the evening. That's how it is. Whereas in my world of real estate and showing homes, I put mileage on the vehicle. Like, and for me, I need that change of pace. Like I get stir crazy sitting in an office for too long or having meetings for too long. So I think even in choosing your profession, and we don't always get to choose our profession, you're forced into it because of whatever other reason. But I think looking at that, like my wife knows she can be in the office all day because I have the flexibility to run. Now we have to make arrangements sometimes, especially, like last night was the first time we needed a babysitter for the school year because my daughter had her first volleyball scrimmage. And it's like my parents, who sometimes will watch the kids, want to go see my daughter play. And so now we have to arrange for that. And it's like when you pop that on teenage kids and say, hey, would you watch the kids tonight? It's kind of like, even if I don't have a plan, I don't know if I want to commit to that quickly. So to know that, hey, every Wednesday night, like we would do date night. My wife and I had a babysitter come in so that we made sure we went on a date night. So I think a lot of it comes to like time blocking. And then we've talked about it before, and we're sitting here in quadrants, missing Steve, but the quadrant of Eisenhower's matrix, and you had, Fresh, I think you gave it a different name because he pulled it up on the screen. It was Eisenhower's matrix is how I know it, matrix of productivity, where, prioritize and then, urgency, things like that. But that's what I
think I was, it's probably, a lot of them kind of overlap. Remember, I talked about Stephen Covey's,
Stephen Covey. He definitely stole that from Eisenhower, but maybe not. Yeah. I don't know who came first, chicken or the egg. But James, how about for you? Because you're in a pretty flexible business in that regard. I know you've been through some industry changes, but from your perspective, how do the seasons changing, for you? Because you're in an area that has a seasonal kind of weather sort of thing, right?
Sort of. I mean, I have times where I set dates to go to certain places. Like I have a police precinct that I work with every now and then. I go rain, sleet, or snow. But I pretty much try to structure my day and leave some gaps in between if I had to freestyle something. So like if somebody just shows up on my calendar. I had an incident yesterday where somebody made an appointment to speak with me, missed the appointment twice because he rescheduled and everything. Missed the appointment twice, then tried to get a third one. I said, "No, you blew it."
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, and honestly, I think I've mentioned this before too, where it's not an appointment, it's a commitment. And when you treat your schedule as a commitment, you know what I mean? You're more likely to follow through with it. But there's nothing more frustrating. I was talking to one of my former agents today, like when somebody doesn't see it from the other side or your perspective. Yeah. That's where those guys in Connecticut used to tell me to repeat back to them what they just said so they can hear how stupid they sound. And you got to be careful with that, obviously. But it is something where, that law of reciprocity is real, and I'll give you a second chance. But hey, Daddy Rapone, screw me once, shame on you. Screw me twice, shame on me. He didn't use quite that language, but something like that. So,
but in a way, too, it's like you got to make people respect your time.
Well, and right, especially if you are respectful of other people's time. And I say that just coaching flag football. Like when I tell the parents practice is from 6 to 7:30, because I'm a parent of an athlete. I've gone to pick up my son from hoops, and he's 20 minutes later than what they say. And I'm like, dude, where were you at? He's like, oh, coach ran it late. It's like, dude, that's not okay. Like you commit to the time. We have other commitments after this. And whether it's 6th or 7th grade basketball, 3rd or 4th grade flag football, or junior, senior, high school, like that is something that frustrates me. Yeah, it's one of those things. Do what you say you're going to do. Be accountable at the very least and be respectful of other people's time and effort, especially. So, no, that's great. Well, and I'll be, I don't know if anybody recently saw Greg Olson for some reason. He's an announcer, so I'm the broadcaster, but he came out saying how, youth sports is being ruined because they're not in multi-sport events or, multiple sports. And I think part of the multiple sports thing, the different socioeconomics, all different cultural, whatever else. But I think it's doing what we're talking about, learning to manage your time a little bit, even as a kid, like understanding that there's only so much time in a day. And again, if you just do one sport and really focus on it, you can get better, but you can also get burnt out. And I think same thing happens in business and the seasonality of that. You know what I mean? It's like, when your busy time is, and if you're not well rested and ready to crank it up at that time, it will run you over. And I think that's, that everybody talks about work-life balance, but I'm a full tilt kind of guy. You know what I mean? But I need the maintenance, the reprieve, whether it's, massage for the body, whether it's chiropractic. Like, you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And I think that's the biggest thing for me in my routine. It enables me to really lay out those priorities and kind of set out what I need to do for the week. And I don't like to look beyond a week if I don't have to. There's just so many things you can get done. And then I think of there's a great book, David Laconnie, I think it is, Power of an Hour. And like, dude, I'm an ADHD guy, so I have trouble paying attention without a squirrel. You know what I mean? I'm not even looking at the screen with the baseball game or I'll get. But like kids, adults really can only focus for an hour at a time to really get the most out of themselves before they need some sort of reprieve or break. And again, maybe you don't. My wife seems to just go full tilt all the time, but I think understanding yourself, what you need, and it's not even being lazy, it's being work smarter, not harder. And I don't mean you got to work hard, but there is something to be said for proper sleep, proper nutrition, and that proper mindset to be at your optimal performance. But did anybody, I know we've all talked about it before, but does multi-sports, is that a thing of the past? Or I just saw 3 high school kids committed to colleges as baseball and basketball players.
Wow.
And I can't remember, I saw it on an Instagram reel, but I'm talking like a Florida State. And you think about the Charlie Wards, Deion Sanders, like I don't think, kids have gotten bigger, stronger, faster, but it's not because they focus on one sport. You know what I mean? It's more the Darwin side of their parents were both great athletes, and then they had access to training and, trying all these different things. Because even with, Taxi, his boys, I know one of them's a quarterback, probably the pitcher, maybe the catcher. They've got a good arm. But I think multi-sports really, especially if you happen to have an injury like I had. Like, the reason I was able to focus on track is my football career came to an end. I was depressed enough having to end football. If I didn't have track to look forward to, I don't know how I would have been. So I think there's a multitude of reasons why kids should do multi-sports. I worry that both parents and coaches pressure this, focus on specialization, and they don't think about the burnout. They know it happens, but it's almost that same thing, like, but that won't happen to my kid.
Yeah.
I think it's a mix of the availability and the access of certain facilities. Like, my thing with sports when I was a kid, I ran track, and I played baseball, but I never played organized. Like, no one sent me to a coach to teach me how to pitch or anything else like that. It was just something you played as a kid. And I ran track up until from, I'm going to say, the 5th or 6th grade up until freshman year of high school. I got bored with it because I think I got, I think I got too fast, and it kind of bored me. And and then after I graduated high school, I picked up basketball. But then my daughter, when she was born, and I got active with her with sports. With her, I did basketball and track, and she loved track and she loved basketball, and I separated the two. Like, I didn't go make a run out and do laps 90 degrees in the on the field and stuff. But with basketball, she really liked it because you can play it indoor, outdoor, and it's more of a specialized sport. But a lot of parents also have to realize that, yeah, you might be trying to train your kid for the NBA because maybe you wanted to be in the NBA or the NFL. There's still kids at the end of the day.
Yeah, that vicarious living is, and you usually see it, most of our peers that had success themselves really just want to offer that same opportunity. That's different than the parent who becomes the coach so that their kid can bat first, even though they're like a 7 position, batting average on the team or whatever. So I think most former athletes can see the parents that they know. I don't even know anything about this parent. I just know they didn't accomplish much athletically because of how hard they're putting on their kid. Yeah. Whereas the guys that have accomplished it usually sit back, want to provide the opportunity for their kids, but also can recognize good quality coaching. Are they teaching the fundamentals? Are they just trying? So there's so many different aspects to it. And I know for like just my boys, I've got 2 boys and 2 girls. My boys are very different. And my older son can be coached tough. My younger son is just like, not that he needs a, white glove treatment, but it's just different. Some coaches he would have a hard time with, and not that I treat him the same as a parent, but I know their personalities are a little bit different, and that it'll be interesting to see how that washes out. And I just hate when I run into parents who, when I ask them what sports their kids play, one of the things they say is X, Y, and Z coach ruined it for them. And it's usually that parent that had never accomplished much athletically, so they're pushing so hard for their kid to be D1 that they took out 3 or 4 other kids in the process when they committed to being a coach for the whole team. And that usually happens at those younger ages. And so, because my youngest son, Lincoln, just started organized baseball as a 9-year-old. Now, I don't know if he'll play in Williamsport in 2 or 3 years. I don't care if he does. But let them just kind of progress naturally. And if they want to get specialized coaching, it's certainly available now. And when I look at that, I want to support the young kid who's providing that coaching. Like I want my kid to get better, and I'm not going to force him, but I'll support it because I want to support, in my opinion, another really small business, or these coaches. Like we've got a local basketball coach, Keith Wallace. I'll give him a shout out because he's outstanding. They call him the Wizard. But my son, I'll post videos of my son, and other local coaches will say you can tell he was in Keith's lab. Just like the way Keith coaches more of a mindset. Right. I mean, and that's what I, as a coach, am trying to bring to my kids, is not just the event, the pole vault, but the positive attitude you have to come in on a 3rd attempt, the focus of being positive. And I'm going to make it not like I have been around coaches that are so negative. The whole aura, dude, is, it's cringy, dude. And again, I'm not any better, but I was coached by some of the best. I've taken classes in sports psychology. I understand the emphasis of encouragement and support, and how so many kids don't get it at home. And so it's like you either get the kid that doesn't get any support at home, or the parent that's so overbearing the kid doesn't even want to play. It is a weird phenomenon. And again, I mean, I don't even care about the money of it all. It's what are we really producing? Are we producing, and we've said this before, coachable kids are employable people in the long run. Because if you're not coachable, you're not employable. And then I saw, do you guys know Marcus Lemonis? He's had a few different TV shows for business, big real estate guy. But somebody asked him recently about if somebody came in, he owns like Camping World and another couple of different businesses. But what if somebody came in to interview for a job with their parent? Like not a support animal, but a support parent. And I can only think, like, how are they going to work on their own then if they need their parent to attend the interview? It's just, but it's a lot of that same stemming from athletics, where I'm going to take Johnny to the game, and I don't know where we went wrong. Was it the entitlement and the everybody gets an award? Because I don't. That doesn't feel like it's bigger than that. Like these guys don't just want scholarships now; they want the NIL.
Yep.
Or so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we got here.
I would say, so I'm back up a little bit because I know when your question was, you had asked about you were just saying, like, in terms of just thoughts about this, with the multi-sport athletes.
Yeah.
Is it dead? No, I don't think it's dead. I think it depends on influence, right? So a lot of times you can have influence from parents, and sometimes parents weren't athletic, so you might not have as much influence. I think when you have educated parents who say we're experienced, right? So we understand, and we did multiple sports, so we understand the value of it. So similar to you, Lay, believe it or not, like the year that I didn't play football, I joined the swim team. So I was on the swim team.
Oh, nice.
So I swam at UConn for a little bit. And so that was like you wouldn't think about that, right? But you know, like my history for swimming, I was a 3-time MVP swimmer in high school. Like
Seriously?
yeah, like I was a
Fresh.
better
What?
swimmer. Yeah, so like you would, you know, I don't know if you remember that we went to the field house one time and we were in the pool. It might have been Razul's freshman year. We went to the pool for something. It was like a treat or something. Like it might have been summer. I can't remember. We were in the pool.
Yeah, probably.
And we got to like just kind of hang out in the pool. And we was like little competition or something. But yeah, man, I was just like swimming is something that I was like I only started doing it at late 15. So I was 3 times.
How did you know you were a fast swimmer? Like how's that come about? You wore the Speedo in a high school, like
yeah, I was a swimmer. Like that's what you swimming.
Seriously?
Yeah, I was a swimmer.
I had no idea, bro.
Yeah. So when I came, little backstory. When I came into UConn, I went to, I walked on, and
yeah.
But at the same time, I spoke to I went to the they had similar to like they had a meeting. They had a swim meeting. I went to the swim meeting. I remember the coach's name was Bob, if I'm not mistaken. It was like Coach Bob something. But then I went to the meeting, told him my times and told him the stuff, and he was like, "Yeah, like you like." He was like, "You could, like I think you'd be fine on a team here, And then I told him, I had only started swimming my sophomore year in high school. So remember, I told you I was 3-time MVP. So that was like my first year swimming. So swimming was something that I did well. And then he said, "Look, I have no problem letting you, I think you'll be fine letting you on the team if your times are what you say they are." And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, you can look it up, New York State, whatever. You can look it up, New York City stuff. And he was like, "Yeah." So it was one of those things where he told me the reality of it, right? And here's the reality of how things work, right? I think track and football is a little different from football and swimming, right? So with swimming, it was.
Is that winter?
They did 2
basketball
season?
I
think it was winter. Okay. I think it was, but you had they practiced twice a day, almost all year round, right? So it was like 2 practices. So he told me, he said, "Look, if you want to, you can." He said, "But I would advise against it." He said, "I would tell you to pick one, right?" He said, "Because you got to do our practices, and you're going to have to do whatever football practices, and you got to maintain academically. You got to do all of that." So my decision ultimately came down to what I had more experience in. I started playing football at like 12, 13. So my experience, I said, all right, well, I got the experience. I've been doing this longer. And, I'll kind of go from there. It's like I was unsure about swimming, even though it was the better sport for me at the time. I was unsure. But I bring that up just to say that it is value in trying these other things because you don't know where your talents lie, right? Most people,
100%.
Most people are, go for like the low-hanging fruit, things that are easy. It's easy to grab a ball, and most people play that sport with the ball, basketball or football, right? You got a bunch of people. But you do have, and this goes back to what James mentioned, sometimes it's about access. So
right,
way different. You can't just go and like, all right, I'm gonna just go start playing. I'm gonna get the guys together and we're gonna go play lacrosse. Like you couldn't do that. You kind of do that with baseball, and that's similar to him. Like we play around the way, we would, you could get a tennis ball or
stick ball,
get an actual baseball, and draw an X on a wall. That's your strike zone. And we all didn't need gloves, or if you had gloves, everybody would swap out, right? Okay, I got my glove, whatever. So we'd figure that out. So you could kind of do that part, but you can't do that with lacrosse. You actually need a pool to go swim. If you do some of these other, like you couldn't just go play golf. Like it was certain things you just didn't have access to. So right. I think it is so again, answer the question. No, it's not dead. It's definitely live and thriving. But I think more parents need to be encouraged that way. I think it's very problematic what's happening with a lot of AAU teams when they're just encouraging like, hey, just do this all year round. Your kid's going to be so much better. But then, like you said, you're going to get to that. You can get to burnout. And you get a lot of that. So I think it's just making sure you are aware and you give kids exposure to try the different things, because a kid might surprise you. And this kid is
just natural talent. Yeah, that's where
good at something else.
And then you don't want to burn your kid out in the sense that he or she doesn't want to play sports at all.
I think that's the biggest, or I mean, a lot of times I think the reason they don't want to play sports at all is that somebody set up expectations that they weren't able to reach, and they're tired of trying to reach for it. I mean, and that's where I worry as far as like, and especially having gone to UConn and the success that the university has had over the last 25 years. I mean, my wife and I were both full scholarship athletes at UConn. You come back to Erie and like you have a couple D1 kids a year, and it just like it is hard to accept that we were kind of the outlier, right? I mean, it's just the market has changed so much. The process has changed. I saw Rick Pitino just posted, or somebody posted of Rick Pitino saying we are not recruiting any high school kids.
Yep.
And so I mean, how much of this youth athletics that now they're in high school and now all these dreams are kind of put away because you got to figure out a different route, going JUCO or something, or just accepting that, hey, you're D2, D3. I don't know why you have to be D1 per se, but it's just very different. And I love Fresh, your perspective. And I'll tell you another kid that my boy Kyle Milliken, who walked onto the track team. He was killed in Mogadishu. He was a SEAL Team 6 guy. He was killed in Mogadishu.
Yeah, I remember that.
On May 5th. Yeah. But I remember Coach Roy, who was our head track coach. Kyle walked on to the track team, but he really trained for track because he wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And so during the swim season, which is the winter, where we also begin our track season for indoor, Coach Roy was walking through the pool, or what is that, a natatorium or something? But he was walking through and he sees Kyle sitting at the bottom of the pool holding like a 45-pound weight, right?
Yeah.
And so
it was a brick. They usually have those bricks. It probably was a brick. Maybe
one of those big heavy weights. So Coach Roy's sitting in the bleachers because he's a track guy on the track team. And he's like, so finally Kyle comes up out of the water and Coach is like, Kyle, what are you doing? He's like, well, I had talked to the swim coach. I told him, the reason I walked onto the track team is I want to get in shape so I can be a Navy SEAL. And part of the SEAL program is underwater training. And so Coach Roy was just like beside himself. And then, he told that story at his, when we celebrated his life a few years back. But I mean, it's like when you think of some of the guys that we played with, like, I had no idea you swam. Like the things that you pursue that nobody else might even know about do still help mold you. I just love the enthusiasm, Fresh, you had when you told us you were an MVP swimmer, bro. Like, I think that's the other thing, having pride in doing some of those things that we know don't matter that much in the scheme of your athletic career, but also built your confidence in saying, like, I can try something new. Look, I was good at this. I didn't start this till 15 years old. So there's something to be said for getting out of your comfort zone and trying new things. So,
no, that's what's up for sure.
For sure.
You want to shift this to some real estate stuff, or
listen? I have been waiting to hear what's going on in your guys' area because, like I mentioned early on, like the last couple of weeks, it's slowed down a little bit for us because I can tell people are doing things, but I have. And I don't know if I'd mentioned this story. I was evicting one of my tenants because I wanted to sell the property. And she fought the eviction. First time in 25 years, I had somebody appeal a judge's decision for eviction. So I didn't want to have her evicted if she was getting so to the point. But the way the terms of this loan were, it's currently a 4.5 interest rate on a 15-year note with a 5-year lock that adjusts in January. So in January, if I kept it, and didn't sell the home, the rate would go from 4.5 to probably high 7s. Yeah, something like that. So, but I reached out to the bank and I'm like, hey, where are rates at right now? I haven't looked at refinancing anything because you hear the rumors. And I was able to get a 6.39 interest rate, commercially speaking, to where my payment has adjusted. I reset a new 15-year note that we were 8 years into. But it's something, we did, because we talked about lines of credit and things like that. But that's something where I felt terrible because I, was trying to put the home on the market. So the tenant moved out. Then when I felt, I tried to keep her in there by looking at financing it on my side. And now it's like, well, since I could get these terms that are favorable, to hold on to this, and it's in a great neighborhood, I'll probably do some work and just rent it out again. So, I mean, yeah, how is what's happening in real estate for you, Fresh, or Razul? I know you've got a ton of stuff going on too.
We actually just got the contract for the 6 acres here in Norwich. So I right before this, I dropped off the check. Thank you for the deposit.
Congrats.
There you go. That's equitable title. Once they accept your deposit, you have equitable title in that property. That's cool.
Yes, sir. So I'm excited about it.
Do you have to get into zoning and all the due diligence now then?
Yes. So we actually have about a month to close. So what they, in our original contract, we put a contingency for a phase 1 environmental, but they'd actually had one done already.
Oh.
So they sent it over, and it looks like there's some mild potential for stuff, but they said it was remediated, but it wasn't actually like verified. No. So my rationale is that we left we purchased the 6 acres for $60K with $1,000 deposit. My rationale is that at least we could tie it up, see what we can figure out in that time frame, and if we risk the $1,000, then we risk the $1,000. But at least we have it tied up, and we have the opportunity to kind of take advantage of it. And even if we can't maximize it, or we're limited to certain portions of it, I think that at that purchase price, we're still in a good position with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That sounds like a really good position. Just make sure, and Lay probably would echo this too, is you got to do your own study. Probably, man. You probably still need to follow up, because I think, for one, you got to check the dates on what they did. Look at you can go into weeds of what that company did on what level, because it's like levels to the environmental studies, and then what they were looking for. So do your own joint, and then just have it independently done, and then just I guess figure out what you could do from there. But from a zoning standpoint, I know we talked about it a little bit last couple of weeks, but you should at least know. I think you said you did know where you think it has. I think you said it has good zoning for what you want to do in terms of multifamily.
Yeah.
So you have that. Now you just definitely need to know those environmental factors, and if you find that stuff out on the front end, so that you can avoid any future headaches from.
Yeah, and I think. And that's where I've seen so many times, and like even the larger tracts, the 20 to 30 acres, where you build that out with what you'd be able to develop. And then if wetlands comes in and says, hey, by the way, you can only get, 3/4 of the homes you plan. Well, that really changes your return. And I think what it sounds like, Razul, is that even if something like that comes up, you'll still be able to do something where it makes that acquisition worthwhile, even at the $60K. Even if that means you have to sit for a minute and let some things play out in the area or whatever. But there are things, whether it's bringing in fresh soil and let it sit for some time. I mean, there are times where if you work with the right people, they will let you move wetlands and mitigate it. So, and that can be in different areas, doesn't have to be on that parcel. So there's definitely ways to work through it, but you definitely want to find out, especially if there's investors involved, before you set expectations and then find out, well, there's bureaucracy that's holding this up. And that tends to be, because they want you to spend the money on the due diligence before they can give you a yes or no. And it feels like even when you do that, there's just going to be a maybe. But yeah, I think that's great. And it's, at the very least, it's going through that process of acquiring the property, making sure you're doing your due diligence. And part of it is intuition. You know what I mean? Understanding the worst case scenario. And if that worst case scenario is still a worthwhile deal, I think that's what's cool about the changing market. When you start to see deals like that starting to happen, for I feel like I've always been a true buyer. Like I am on the buyer's side. I know how hard it can be to find some things that make sense. So as this market begins to shift, and I think in real estate and most transactions, it has to be a win-win situation. And anymore, it's kind of people's expectations. So you're going to get to find people like me who, again, on that commercial side of financing, it's like, hey, things are going to change drastically. So do I reset myself and refinance or look at something different, or do I liquidate? Because it's still a good time to sell stuff, even though more inventory is coming on the market. Well, that's really exciting. So now, does that create a month of urgency, though?
Yeah,
or have you?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I have a list of things that we are, that we have to do for our next part of the process. And actually, I don't know if you guys remember Rob Nichols or not, but I know
the name.
He's become. I think he's the same year as me, but he walked on also. And I know he was there at least 1 year, if not two. He wasn't there he didn't stay with the whole time, but he's been doing really a lot of big things in development in Boston area.
Oh, nice.
And so I've been in his mastermind for a while now. So, I'm fortunate that I have someone that has some experience to kind of walk along with in the process,
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where, especially if you come to hurdles that they've already been over and can tell you how to do it, because same thing with my wife and her business at franchise, the value she has for people is that she's been through it. Like you come to something, whether it's environmental or something else, and that your mentor said, oh, listen, this is who you contact. It's going to take some time. And I think that's the biggest challenge is the time it takes and getting the professional people out there when they say they're going to be out there.
Yeah, for sure.
So he's doing that same type of development though that you're talking about in Boston, because I mean I would think that's probably a similar type of rules and regs or uniform construction code.
Yeah.
He would know what to look for.
It's just I think the process is similar, right? Some of the specific regulations from one municipality to another are going to be different, but the overall process is similar. I actually think that there's probably a lot more regulation in Boston, like a larger city like that, than Norwich. So we might not even have to, jump through some of the hoops that he might have had
that's
to.
Good.
That's what I'm thinking, and even from being in our group, that's how it seems. But he, like I said, he does have a good amount, a wealth of knowledge and experience. So I'm looking for. We're gonna review it. We have a call tomorrow that we're gonna review it and kind of figure out, the different tiers of it, right? I'll probably have to get a civil engineer to look at the land and say, all right, well, this is the capacity of this land. You know what I mean? And then from there, we can build out like the pro forma to say, all right, if we can do 50 units, roughly this size, this is roughly what it could generate. This will be the cost of it. And then, from there you can break out, the how much of it is going to be the equity portion of it that either you have or your investors will have, and how much will be financing from the bank. From there, you can kind of calculate what the expected returns will be, and what the time frames will be, so you can kind of build it out from there. But he has probably more specific experience in understanding the nuance in it, like time frames and what the challenges could end up being. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because that's where it usually comes down to like that building envelope, they'll call it, where depending on what your setbacks are. I mean, is it a pretty rectangular, traditional shape 6 acres? Or are there irregularities? Is there road front? Usually road frontage is king.
Yep.
But if you're developing it all as the same, process versus I don't know if you got to put streets in and how much crazy 50 units looks like, or but it's also that public sewer, public water, all those, because those tap-in fees, and that's, I serve on a sewer authority. I cannot believe how expensive these tap-in fees have gotten relative to just a couple years ago. So even with, is it Rob you said?
Yeah.
Rob Nichols. So it's like, even with Rob, I'd be curious to know in Boston, how much, based on inflation the last few years, how much have the permitting costs gone up? Because those are the types of things that in these developments, and especially if they take a longer period of time, I mean, 50 units, how many units would you build per year? I mean, I don't know what the capacity is for.
That's a good question.
You know,
these are things I don't know. I think
Yeah.
part of what I'll be leaning on for his experience is how to structure it and phase it out in a manageable manner or way. You know what I mean?
right.
I know that I have access to some capital personally and some partners that I've made some good returns for that are looking to reinvest some funds, so that can help to get us to at least a point where, because once you've gotten from where we're at now, once we get permits for a certain amount of things, the value of the land itself before we even start digging increases significantly.
Right. For
So
sure.
that for me is essentially the goal, to get to that point, and then to probably take on a more experienced developer partner to help actually build it out. That's really what I'm thinking.
And I'll be curious. Oh, go ahead, James.
I was going to say, not to interject, but you guys should. I'm just sitting here listening to the deals that you guys are talking about. As a company, because I know we spoke about other things, but as a company, you guys need to do key man insurance policies.
Yeah,
you have to. So I mean, and that's in case something happens to one of your key members of your business. So like, let's say God forbid, Laban, something happens to you, then you're not here anymore. How does the business progress? Whereas the insurance will take care of that until there's another person who can fill that gap. So it's good that you guys are thinking of, you're doing all this planning and stuff. But and this is for anybody with a business,
any rainmaker, right? I mean, that's where in our industry we call it a rainmaker. But if you're generating the revenue, for the family, especially for the business, and that's where in the real estate business, it's really my mom, my brothers are agents. I have a different role, but and I've never thought of myself as a key man. But then when I think of the other entities that are based, that's scary. That was a little wake up call where it's like, maybe. But you're not
that's
wrong.
Separate from what we spoke about before with the other stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's where it is good to have a plan written out. Heaven forbid, something happens with you. And I know plans always change, but there is that perspective to it, because again, I think there's so much effort. Razul, think about how much due diligence already you've put in there, time, effort, energy. And some of the deals just don't go through to fruition. And most of the time, if they don't, you're usually happy it doesn't. But there's just so much legwork that you probably don't share with a lot of others that you've experienced. Clearly as a key man,
you're like so in it that you are actually putting forward a lot of effort, but you don't even recognize it.
Don't realize
you're going through it, because it's just how you're so used to just putting in that
what
work.
you do.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that's where it is good. So I've always had this contemplation, because there's a lot of different philosophies on this. I look at it as an accountability thing, where if I have dreams and aspirations, I'm not afraid to share them in the hopes that it'll hold me accountable, not in a way, because I've heard the people say, don't share your dreams until you've accomplished it, because everybody's going to shoot it down or something. Whereas I think it's important to share those things, because you're going to learn and maybe avoid, a fork in the road that you were planning on going down, but because you shared what you want to do and somebody's like, hey, just be careful going. And I think, Fresh, you've said that a few times, where it's like, whether it's zoning, that due diligence, it's not to say it's not the right thing, but like Fresh said, like, you do you, like, but make sure you do your own due diligence. Don't just take somebody's word that, this is really tough and you might not be able to do it, where if your approach might make it open the door for, again, others after you to share, like, no, if you just go about it this way, especially with the planning, because I've seen so many townships push back on developers. And again, it blows my mind when you have these townships not embracing, developers because it's more tax dollars. Now, you might have incentives where you don't have to pay tax right away on your development, but any new development is future tax dollars. I mean, that's where all of us are vital to our townships. My mom preaches that all the time with real estate, where when we sell a home, whether it's an investor, an owner, like they're buying furniture, they're hiring people to paint, they're hiring, small businesses to keep the churn of our economy.
It impacts the economy. And, like I forgot, it's always, they got all these different metrics, right? Like when it comes to development, like how many jobs are brought in when you do certain things, right? So,
right. Not just the construction, but once it's established, right. To erecting the structure, to say like the person who has the porta potties that the Johns like to let that sit on site. All of these things have it has a ripple effect. So you are impacting the economy, and that's why it's good when you want to develop. I mentioned this before. I don't know if you had a chance to do it. You want to look at the economic development plan in the county, city, state where you are, because grants,
there's grants and maybe money, and you can see how you can be a part of what's happening or what they want to bring. You may be a missing link of something that they are like, well, we want to bring jobs, we want to have more affordable housing, and it could just be like, okay, it could be an 80-20 situation where like you only need to you can qualify for certain types of funding and things like that because you only need to make 20% affordable. 20% affordable. Like so you need to be aware. But if you don't make yourself aware of what's going on, you just go like, all right, I'm just doing it, and you do that whole tomorrow thing like we've all done. Like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow turns into next year, and then it doesn't happen sometime, and you find yourself in a tough situation. So
I want to make sure. And I think that's where sharing your ideas, dude. Like, there are grant writers that are hired. Like, we have I don't know if our township as a whole hired a grant writer, and then they offer them to other authorities. But like part of that is just having the experience to know what to put in the grant, so that you're tugging on whether it's the heartstrings of somebody that's reading it or just a bureaucratic process. Because we found that at local government, like for these. Like CRIS designation, all these different acronyms for incentivizing, development and growth. It's amazing what opportunities are out there. And Erie specifically has a bunch. But the challenge is the other, stats going on for Erie draw away from a lot of developers that might consider building there. So, you got to look at all the incentives. But I think putting it out there and letting people know what you're planning to do is the right way to go about it, because you never know who's going to catch wind that says, oh man, I know this guy down at the township. This is who you need to talk to. And then they tell you how to properly, title or declare something. I mean, even in our local township, I want to build it. And hopefully my brother Levi isn't watching this, but I want to build a small gym behind my office, like for basketball, pole vault, but also as like a social gathering hall, right? And so if I call it a multi-use facility, like the zoning person in our township help me label it the right way, so when I present it to the planning committee, they're like, okay, that title for what you're trying to build, it makes sense, and we allow that in your zoning, so you don't have to stir anything up. Whereas I might have gone in with a different approach had I not talked to her, called it something that disqualifies it just because you named it the wrong thing. And it even happened with our sewer authority with a retention pond. It's not a retention pond like we retain the sewage. It's for a period of a heavy storm where it has to back up somewhere. So it backs up into the retention pond and then releases over the next 24 to 48 hours, gets washed out, and there's no stinky poo from the sewer. But if you call it a retention pond and they think sewage is going to sit in this retention pond, it's never going to fly in a public setting. And, so I think those are the things that, the right terminology. You got to find professionals, whether it's a civil engineer like Razul, and I hear civil engineers like, oh, dude, hourly rates, I can't imagine. But they've been through it before and usually have like a boilerplate to say, hey, this is similar enough to a project we did over here. We can bring it over without much, outside of the topography and some of the specifics to the land, but we know how many units per acre we can get. And a lot of times, and I'm telling you, serving on the sewer authority has been so great to me. Like, our township has so much growth. Our executive director talked about putting a moratorium on sewer permits. Well, dude, that stops growth immediately. Like, you want to make sure you're in an area where if you decide to put 50 residential units in, the township and the sewer authority can handle that much additional capacity. And so, again, there's some things that get so into the weeds, but are vital to your project potentially. And if you didn't know that your township only had so much capacity for sewer, there's just a lot to it. So I didn't mean to get too far out in the weeds. But I think that's awesome that you've already taken a step and they are already done an environmental on it, because that tends to be what really chews up more than anything time, not to mention the money. Yeah. But you have to know that sort of stuff.
And to add to that, so I put it in the chat, people don't take advantage of some of these programs you get, right? It's an SBA link, right? But with the SBA,
oh yeah,
right, like the link, if you click on that link, Razul, you'll see like the local assistance, right? That's just local assistance. You got places where you can get business mentors for free. Like, this is your tax dollars already paid for it. You got SCORE, you have they have different ones. They usually link to a university. You're probably gonna have something linked to UConn, believe it or not. Yeah, you might even know somebody that is linked to will help you write grants for your business. And understand that's each business you have, Razul. So it's not like you doing something.
They're just gonna help you with one right?
thing. That's separate from House of Change. That's separate from the Husky Investor. That's all of these things. You can have somebody to help all these different things. So every entity you have kind of operates on its own kind of thing. But so you have these resources that you can tap into. And in addition to something that I don't know if you realize, is basically what Laban is stating is Laban is involved in the local municipality, the local government of things that's happening. Dude, and he's familiar. Like, his face is familiar. His businesses are familiar, and you have to become familiar so that people know who you are when it comes down to. So when you're fresh on someone's mind, they're like, oh, this person is doing this already, when they're already talking about it in these meetings. So it's not saying you got to run for office or anything, but it's okay to sit on a board. It's okay to sit on a board. It's okay to sit in and attend these economic development meetings. Sometimes these things are going for crazy hours, but you go there, but get familiar.
It's a form of networking, but for me, and I remember when I first asked to serve, because we've been in business 18 years. I moved out here 18 years ago. And so I wanted to get involved right away. And I wanted to be on the planning commission. My neighbor is actually the president of the planning commission, or the chairman. And one of the supervisors at the time, he says, you know what? You're in real estate. He says, you ought to be in our sewer authority, because if anybody's going to develop, they have to come to the sewer authority first to apply for a permit to see if they can even get public sewer before they go building anything else. And that was, I think, 12 years ago that I joined the sewer authority, and it's been invaluable. Not only that, like, I'll have people in the community drive by, like, there's a new gas station going in. Well, they started digging ground about a week ago. I knew 6 months ago what it was going to be, because they asked for the sewer permits. So when people are like, hey, what's breaking ground on the corner of Edinburgh Road and Hershey? I'm like, oh, it's a speed check. So like, I had another great story. The guy that coaches football with me, flag football, we were talking about smoothies, and he's like, oh man, my wife and I, when we go on vacation, I got to be near a tropical smoothie. And I'm like, oh dude, we're getting a tropical smoothie. He's like, are you serious? Yeah. And I knew it 4 or 5 months before it came in. I told him right where it was going to be. Same thing, Crumble came into town. But serving on those boards, not only that, I learned so much from these big businesses, big developers coming in, and now I get to see the plans, the topography. On the sewer authority, you see everything, the impact it's going to have on the whole area. In fact, we have a big one going on right now, and nobody knows what's going on, but it's night work on one of our main thoroughfares, which is Peach Street, right by a Burger King. Well, we are in the process of upsizing our sewer from 8-inch to 12-inch, maybe 15. But we're taking existing pipe in the ground, replacing it with a larger pipe, and we have to bore underneath I-90, which is a 4-lane highway. And so that you see all the pipes sitting out. Now, to the general person, they don't see anything going on. But for me, knowing what's going on, it's like, dude, this is a huge project about to be boring at night underneath into a couple hotels. And it's all vital for the growth, because the reason we're upsizing the pipe is that about 2 miles away from all this commercial development, there's large lots that are currently cornfields that could soon be 50, new residential homes once the public utilities are there to handle that capacity. So I would highly recommend, especially if you're in real estate, I don't care if you're a real estate agent or an investor, look to serve on some of these boards. And I can assure you, most boards have a lot of old timers, and it's okay. It's good, but they also need some fresh blood with a new perspective. I'm not afraid to share my opinions, even from the jump. And a lot of people think I'm crazy, but I treat it like a board member would, just inquisitive about what they're trying to do, why they're trying to do it. Does it benefit the township? Does it go against, what they're planning, the future to look like in this area? So I think it's vital to get involved, and it does position me as an expert in the market because I'm paying attention to this stuff. Whether or not it has an impact on the market, which we've already established, it always does, right? So yeah, I highly recommend getting involved with different boards and committees so that you can learn more about it. And then, Razul, when it comes time for you to present, I mean, it's not like you're going to be shown favoritism, but they know more about your character and how you handle other people's proposals and things. And that's where I sit on these boards, and I often take the side of the developer versus the authority, because that's who I am. And I understand that's why boards have people on them, to get the bureaucracy and use, what's between our ears to think if this bureaucratic process is the right thing for going forward. Don't be afraid to, swim upstream.
No, and then in bureaucracy, I can understand, being someone that is environmentally, or try to be environmentally conscious, the necessity of, having some level of like oversight and control, but some of it is just, like, for example, we're here, my girl and I are doing, we're looking to do compost hauling, and we have the vehicle and everything like that. But because of zoning, to be a hauling company, you have to be in a specific zone where we're just parking the vehicle. So it's going to cost us an extra $200 a month to be able to park in someone else's lot because they're zoned properly. Whereas we're not hauling anything here. We're still taking it to another facility, but that's just that adds a $2,400 to our bill. Our expenses each year, and it's like I said, I get in instances where there's a need for it, but a lot of the times it just makes things a lot harder and more obstacles for people that are trying to do something.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm okay leaning into bureaucracy, but I want a good justification why this will or will not set a precedence. And I've talked about that before in zoning, where the way things have developed around this particular lot, it doesn't make sense for it not to have a variance or a zoning change. And a lot of these townships do review their zoning every 10, 15, 20 years. But if you're getting, into year 18, 19 of a zoning map, a lot of the things have probably changed to where they might want to look at that, whether you can find a variance, get a variance. But it is interesting how some of that zoning, those changes, or the way they've, like, our township has changed the whole names of them, like rural resources, and to preserve some land. And I'm all for that too. Like, I know of a township in 99, they built some single lot subdivision with 1 acre parcels, which are still pretty nice and sizable. But the township, as soon as that subdivision went in, they're like, no more. We will not allow subdivisions of less than 2 acres, which means you would have to have at least a 4 acre property to subdivide it. So they're trying as a township to preserve. Now, clearly they don't care as much about their tax base, or they're, flush enough to where that's not as important. But so much of that frustration, Razul, is because you're trying to develop something that is a benefit to the community and the tax base, and they just keep putting red tape in front of you. And my question is, why the red tape? if it's justifiable and it makes sense, okay. But a lot of this, somebody just put it in, ink so that it could be in there, but there's no practical use for that rule except for obstruction of my development. And I think that's where you should have board members that can hear your plight and say, okay, that does make sense based on what you want to do. It's in the right area for this going, for the next 10, 20 years. The other thing I love about sewer is that we talk about 50 and 100 years out as far as how the township, what it looks like, all those sort of things. And I think so often we are so short-sighted in, gratification and everything else that you're just worried about the next year or two. When you talk about true development, and a lot of these old school developers, they've been sitting on land for decades, waiting for the right time to put it into a development. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. Getting in with those people that are going to make those decisions for you, if for nothing else, to build that rapport and let them know that you're cognizant of their rules and you want to work with them. But, how can I press the limits and still stay within the rules? And a lot of people should respect that. And of course, you're going to find at least one board member on every one that's an obstructionist and just there to, they need to find, we've all seen them. But that's what I like in the challenge of challenging some of those people and just asking, okay, if it makes sense, explain it to me in an anecdotal evidence that it makes sense, and I'll hear you. But otherwise, I'm going to push back a little bit with what I think.
Let me add something real quick. So I know Razul got to jump in a second.
Yeah, we're getting close here.
So I would say, don't get caught up in the mundane, right? For and let that distract you from your end goal, right? Because you get caught in the weeds a lot of the things that go on with some of these boards and stuff. Like, don't get into tiffs and tit for tats. Look, here's the thing. More than likely, whatever you're trying to do, somebody has done it before. Right? So figure out. Okay, go. Utilize your resources. Who's done this before? What I'm trying to do, and see how they did it. Just go with that. So, and now if the way somebody did it because they were buddy with some people in this municipality in this area, then okay, well, let me get in, right? Or let me get in and let me have somebody else from my team get in too. Like, let's get a few people. Like, understand. Like, you want to play chess and not checkers. Like, you gotta. Who said just you got to get in there? Like, a bunch of people trying to do the same thing you trying to do. All y'all get in there. Just then before you know it, you're like, oh man, they don't know. And y'all keep it when you have these meetings. Just keep it very low key. They don't know what you're doing. But the thing is, you are moving in such a way that, all right, it's a board of 7. We got 4 on the board. So we're the decision-making majority. So just make sure you approach it from a strategic standpoint and whatever you're trying to do, which is your end goal. Just focus on your end goal, see who did it before, and let that be your guide. Let that be your true north on how you want to get things done, right? So I would just say, just kind of leave you with that. Before I know you got to roll. So hopefully that makes sense and it's helpful.
No, I appreciate that. That's good feedback. I appreciate it. And, thanks for that. And I know I'm not sure if you guys are going to chat a while longer, but I just had my next appointment is scheduled. So
and I know I don't have Steve here to ask the questions and regulate me, so I can just go talking, and I don't have my wife on the side of me like, raising her eyebrows like, cut it. So I think what's that, James?
No kids coming down and say, hey, we got to go.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I got no distractions. I already had to cancel the pole vault, so I got hours here. No, we'll get finished. What's that?
I about to say, is it raining over there? Did you say it was raining or?
Yeah, it's just one of those dreary days. I mean, honestly, I think this is where you gotta find something that's an outlet to get you out of that funk. Like, I just feel, especially not getting to do that routine when I got to cancel, and I hate having to cancel, but I also know, like, I was an athlete. No kid wants to try to pole vault in 68 degree and rain. And you want it to be, especially in the summer, you want it to be productive work. We all know how we've gone, and it's like, dude, that was a waste of time. I wasn't into it. You know what I mean? So, I hope we can get Steve back here next week. But I
would say, I know how much we try not to go more than an hour and a half, right? Is that the right?
Oh man, we're at hour. He says keep it to 45 minutes because cats.
Oh really?
I go back to that power of an hour, dude. After about an hour, cats are like, "Yo, I'm out."
So I would say that next time maybe I could be helpful in that, right? And in terms of making sure like certain things go a certain way. I think it would be good. Maybe we could talk about next week. Maybe because I pulled some stuff together for just talking about we
talked about deals,
emerging markets. So we could do some deals. We could talk about deals. We could talk about emerging markets. I think it'd be good to inform the people about emerging markets. Remember I talked about you have your different phases. You got your buyer phase 1, buyer phase 2, seller phase 1. So I got some illustrations you could throw up, kind of go over that stuff so people can see like, just kind of. And it's bullet pointed, so you don't got to go through deep in the weeds, but just so what it looks like, and then we can identify. So we're all in like check, even with James too. We're in like 4 different markets, so we can kind of go over like where when I throw those up, they can like okay, so based off of that, we're in a seller's market phase 1, and I could be like, well, in my market, we're in this and that. Then we can kind of and help people identify where they are in their market, which also. We give guidance on the different strategies on how to enter and exit, and where to be. So maybe we could tackle something like that next week.
And I know Steve always is good about having specific pointed questions, so he's got access to that platform, and I trust that. Yeah, he'll be able to get back with us and get us back on track. Because I said that before, like I think the engagement of the audience and their questions are what's vital. Because again, we get so stuck up in it with what we're doing, I don't realize some of the things that people that, especially if they've not been in this market before, because it's been a few years of doing the same thing, and it is going to shift. I have a feeling, rather quickly, and I think it's a good thing. We're the market is starting to balance back out with more inventory. What I'm hearing in our industry is that the inventory is back to where it was before 2019. Like 2019, 2020, it was turnkey. I would say
what you just mentioned, industry. So the industry too. So it's not just a market, right? Some people might not understand the kind of market we're in, but definitely just as industry. Some people are just we're really talking about multiple. We're talking about real estate in general, but we're talking about residential and then commercial.
Oh,
right. So
and I think there's
different aspects and let people know which game they want to get into and how to move. So I think we can kind of give them some at least some introductory insight on how to for one identify, and then after you identify ways to approach or attack, if you will, and strategically try to enter the market or at least analyze it.
And I think one of those ways, I talked to a guy that just doesn't have the credit for what he wants to do as a business, but the business idea is strong enough where he just needs to find private investors. And I know there's private investors sitting on money that want to help the right business, but a lot of these guys that don't have great credit, but they have a good bit, they're good at their business. They're not good at selling their business necessarily. And so that's where, whether there's partnerships where you can come in with your opinions and help guide some of that stuff. I think that's where, and it's okay. That's where my wife always talks about, like Marcus Lemonis, anytime he comes in to help your business, he's looking at taking some ownership of that. If it's 10%, 20%, 30%. So it's almost like, because even my wife's talking about that with her mortgage industry. Like, do we hire people, like Razul, you have mentors that have done this before, whether it's Rob or somebody else. Like, do I tell Rob, hey, come in on this at 2 to 3% to get started? And depending on how much you help us, maybe it can build to 5 or 10. But there is something to be said for bringing on partners, even on a test phase at a very lower portion, but just to get that buy-in, because most people do want to have multiple irons in the fire for potential revenue. So I think that's where, especially advisors. But Marcus Lamone is always he's going for a portion of that business just so that it's worthwhile. He doesn't want to give you all this advice, help turn it around, and then all of a sudden nothing to show for.
Yeah, and to add to that, I'll say this, and I'm not sure what the gentleman. Go ahead.
I do have to jump, so you guys, we'll catch up next week.
We got to talk
sure,
about
Razul.
that key man.
Yes, we do. I've been meaning to reach out to you, James. We do.
Yeah.
You guys have a good one.
All right, bro.
All right, Razul, be well.
So to add to what you were saying, Labe, in terms of what you said, Marcus Lamone, what's his name?
Yeah, Marcus Lamonis. He owns Camping World. He's had a couple different shows. I think he's got a new show starting up on one of the business channels. But yeah, I mean, he knows, he's been through it a lot. And what's great about him is he's not in a specific field. Like, he tries all sorts of industries, whether it's food, beverage, manufacturing, industrial. So I think that's the thing with the right systems and the right product. And that's what he says: product, people, process. Those are the three most important things: having the right people, having the right product, and then having a process to it. So
that's a fact. So what I was going to say,
yeah,
in addition to what you like to just to kind of add to what you were mentioning when you mentioned his name was, and I would say, and I don't know this person, but I would say, what you want to do with whatever you have, right? Whatever product you have or whatever you got going on, you should try to structure it or have it to be able to be presented in a way that it kind of sells itself in a sense, right? We're meaning that it's attractive. So, right. So from a standpoint, like, how we were like, hey, if you ask somebody, like you said, how your wife is like, do we want to see if somebody wants to come in on something? But I think if you're doing things in a certain way, somebody's going to say, hey, how can I get a piece of that? That's what you want. You want to put yourself in a position to where someone asks you how you can get a piece of it, opposed to you saying, hey, do you want to piece of it?
Yeah. And
that's also from a negotiation standpoint, when a partnership standpoint, you have more leverage when you are being asked opposed to you asking somebody. So now you're asking me. Now it's about, okay, well, what do I want in exchange for that? Opposed to like, hey, well, what are you offering for me? If somebody wants to come in, what does that look like? Yeah. And you can dictate what that looks like, opposed to, hey, you want to come in? And they be like, yeah, I'll come in if you give me the, the keys to the range, and you give me access to this. And if you give me all of this, what I want. So it's a way different, leverage.
And I think, whether you want a silent partner where, hey, I just need some capital, right? Or I think the best scenario is when you've got somebody that can mentor you, that's done it before, that wants to see you grow, that's willing to say, hey, I'm going to invest some of my own time, so I do want a return of some sort, and make it make sense, so that you don't, like, the worst part is if you bring somebody in and then you have a terrible time stroking that check to them because you feel like they're not worth their value or what they negotiated early on. And how quickly you forget how much somebody helped you get started. And I think that's where those dynamics and balancing that all out, whether it's employees that should become partners, like I'm in the stage of my life and business where it's like, I'm looking to get into still other industries per se, but I'm chock full as far as my schedule. But if I can find somebody to manage that business and partner with me, because I will feed it, I have clientele that will utilize it, but I don't have the time to go do it or become an expert in it. But if you are, let's partner up. And so I think that's where I'm a big fan of partnerships, and a lot of entrepreneurs are too good at what they do, to delegate it out and step aside and hire that partner, or bring, they've been an employee and make them a partner now and give them some ownership in it. And it doesn't have to be decision-making ownership. Do you know what I mean? It should be that buy-in, so that they're out there, raving about your business, as they should have been the whole time if they're an employee. But you can just
type of value add. I agree. It should be
right.
There's adding value in some way. Now that value can take different shapes and forms, but some value of some sort.
And I said this to somebody else where it's like, okay, they're offering you a portion of the, ownership, but is it a profitable business? You know what I mean? Or is it a losing cause and they need you to come in and help rescue? So I think evaluating all of that, but understanding the value you bring to any partnership, whether it's the experience, the working knowledge, or even the license, right, James? I mean, for you have the license to invest in insurances and different things that, whether it's the key man policy that's vital to a business or other aspects, I mean, you understand based on your experience where you can help, especially business owners, to kind of protect themselves and set themselves up, for that future, which we all know you can make a business plan, but you have to be nimble enough to be willing to make changes.
Exactly.
But for sure, that's where you gotta, show your value, and be able to, again, bring these rising tides, bring all boats up. But, most of the time it's through your connections and doing what you say you're going to do as far as that goes. So,
and that's one of the good things about the policies that I do, where you can make yourself a bank, because, the one thing that holds up businesses is money. You got to have a certain credit score, or you have to have a certain criteria to get a loan. And then the loan has to be a certain amount of money, or the bank lends a certain amount of money. If you put into yourself, you can put yourself into that business financially, you'll stand out a whole lot better. You'll be in a better position, because.
Well, I think, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, just like what Fresh was saying. What was it last week when you was telling Laban to see me for an IUL?
No, I was saying, I think whether he sees you for an IUL, which I think would be a good idea, but I just think from discussions with him, I think he's in a position to self-fund. I think he should self-fund more than you can always use leverage, but I think you can kind of keep you can make money off your own interest and keep this money in house opposed to giving it somewhere else.
And it's saving you
at that point. How you choose to do it is your decision.
And it's saving you a lot. I mean, like, you can leverage off your business without really coming out of pocket with a whole lot, in all honesty. So there's plenty of ways of doing it. Like, you can do it where you put in your own capital into it, and in a year or two you can start pulling money out, or do it through leverage. You know what I mean? Let it build up to where you're able to pull out $1 million, $2 million, $100,000, $200,000, and you're paying yourself 6% interest.
Yeah, I think that's where, again, investing in yourself. And I think early on, it was the education. Like, I talked to so many people, read so many books. And then, I've now been investing for 22 years, and I'm sitting here just a simple thing like the Airbnb. And we've talked about that before. Like, the last few years, I'm like, oh man, I'm a long-term buy and hold guy. And then you get the turnover and you're like, man, this would not be happening if I had the Airbnb where I'm in here on the regular. It would not get this bad. And as much as people are living there and you understand it, it's like, but some of this is just deferred maintenance, right? I went through a home we just took back. I'm like, dude, this thing needs windows. And it needed windows when we bought it, but because we were able to just find a tenant right out of the gate, we didn't worry about it. And now we're getting ready to sell it, 10 years later. It's like, oh, dude. Now, do we, all the things that we need to do? So I think that's where, depending on how you want to invest and that deferred maintenance, because I remember we got in bare bones, like whatever we had to do to get in. We weren't buying turnkey places. We were buying things that needed fixed up. And then as the investment, as it goes, like if you're not paying attention, 10 years go by and you're like, dude, we got to replace all the light fixtures, all that other stuff. So, but it's the same thing. Like you're saying, positioning yourself, investing in yourself early so that down the road you can leverage, things that can be collateralized. Cause that's the biggest thing. When you go to a bank, they're like, okay, well, what do you have for collateral? They don't care so much. I mean, the credit score matters, but it's like, do you have assets that we can leverage against? So in case, and that's the other thing I tell buyers all the time. As soon as you apply for the loan, the bank plans on you not paying the very first monthly payment. Like that's how they treat you is if, hey,
like you're stealing.
Give us your money down. We're going to pay for all these fees. And then we are going to bank on you not paying us ever again. It is unfortunate. So yeah, if you can pay yourself through any of these means, that's the way to do it.
And it's a lot faster. It's a lot faster. You put in
the process of close. Yeah. You make a few calls and the check's in your bank account, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot to be said for that process. And again, I think as a business owner, it is good to go through that traditional banking process to know what their expectations are. But then you sit down with somebody for hard money and it's like, wait, that's all you need to get? Yeah. But that's why you're paying the hard money price, because you don't have to go through all those things and all the stipulations. But I think, again, it's like anything else. Keep a balanced portfolio, know what you can leverage out. And because a lot of the banks we deal with, like the deals have to make sense numerically for them to be willing to loan. And again, I'm thankful the assets are still there. The values are still there. We're not seeing appraisals come in low. But it is an ever-changing market that you definitely got to pay attention to. Yeah. And, there's no doubt there's avenues to go. And like you said, Fresh, what part of it, might make sense financially, but if it doesn't comfort you, like if it's going to stress you out going about it and I'm sure, James, you get clients like that all the time where they know it makes sense financially, but they can't get over that hump of either this is the way we've always done it or
your ways.
I would look at it this way too. So we've especially as former athletes, man, we've been through stress. Stress help make us
pressure builds.
It helped put us in certain positions. It's certain things you just know you need to do, right? Nobody like I do. Do I want to make my do I look forward to like paying for life insurance or whatever, or you look forward to paying for health insurance? No, you're gonna do it though because you know the alternative. So it's one of those things where I look at it like this. So two ways. One is look at it as you have another tool in your toolbox. At least set it up, right? Set up to where you have the tool to use. I can utilize this tool, right? You already need it or have it anyway, but you don't maybe not have it set up in such a way that you can utilize it. What I'm speaking of specifically is like life insurance. If you got life insurance, you should have it set up to where you can use it the way you want to use it to help you grow your businesses and things like that. If it's not set up that way, then go ahead and switch that thing over to something that allows you to do that and move it to that direction. Right now, you have a tool in your toolbox. You already got a life insurance. You just don't have the one that's as flexible as you need it to be. So you're already doing it. Move it over to doing something like that. Then you can build up the confidence, if you will, and see it work and allow yourself, okay, I have this tool I can use. But that's one way I look at it. I would look at it having, just having another tool in your toolbox to be able to use to make different moves. And then the other way, kind of might have lost my train of thought with that, but I think the other way is just making sure you outside of having that tool in your toolbox, just knowing that, pressure makes diamonds. Like you have to put yourself, like when we work out, we put ourselves under stress. When we do certain things, we put ourselves under, it's controlled stress, right? We're in controlled environments that we understand how to, like what the end result will be, right? It's a calculated thing. It's not just like, all right, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's all I would say about that. Like, I would look at it no different than it's already something I'm going to do, and let me make sure I'm in more control than someone else, right? And because we've all had my first insurance policy. I think I had a term policy. Is just was a safety net. It was just in case. It was a just in case policy. Until I graduated to I'm in control policy. Right, I have the safety net. But now I also have something I can use to invest and do things, and I could pull this out and allow me to make more money from it and do more things from it. So it's like anything else. That's just one tool, but you still will have you still going to have the relationships with your bankers. You're still going to have
it's like I said before, you got to keep those options open. And I've said that. I was just at lunch today with that former agent of ours, and I'm like, it's stressful, that these tenants that have moved out and they don't keep the place in great shape. But I'm like, man, I'm blessed to have bought those when we did, to be able to make that decision I have now. So, and I think that goes back to just investing both in yourself and in your future. Like, the earlier you can start that, the better you're going to be. And that's with anything. I mean, everybody, that analysis by paralysis. And that's where Fresh, you'll love this. My brother and I used to say, pressure makes me fresher. It is one of those things
Pressure
where
makes me fresher. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I think, again, you want to be well prepared. We've talked about due diligence. And so, yes, I mean, I owe James a phone call as well. My wife, we were supposed to be in Puerto Rico this past weekend, but with Hurricane Aaron, the wife went down for business and I stayed home with the kids. But I do need to sit with her and just, again, sit down and talk about all these things, because we get things in motion to where we don't even, I mean, it's nice when you get things set up and you don't have to think about them, but it's amazing how, if you don't go back and pay attention to what you have, man, you might not be getting the best deal you could be getting just because you've been lulled into whether it's complacency or whatever else. So I think that's where we talk about it all the time. You got to know your numbers. But if you can make your numbers work better and you just haven't evaluated it because you weren't paying attention, it's just not an excuse. So I owe James a phone call for sure, because I know there's just things that I've got to get locked in and everything else. I do have a coaching call with my business coach on Friday, so that's always refreshing because he gets to hold me accountable to the things I need to pursue as well. But
we can talk on a Saturday if it's good for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I don't
do that for everybody.
Well, no, I appreciate that. But it is one of those things where it's like, I know I want to have 30 to 45 minutes to sit and chat. And then it's like, I've got this after this, it goes back to that routine, James. And I'm not going to make excuses. I'm just saying it's one of those things that once I get back into that new routine, then I can do my time blocking and know that I can confidently make that. That was the same thing I had to do with my seller, that call. It's like, I know I got to talk. It's going to be at least 30 to 45 minutes. And I just don't have the set time before the next appointment comes up. But You're never too busy to make more business. And that's where I tell people, I'm busy, but if you need help with real estate, I'm never too busy for business, and we can find a way to squeeze you in. Like the guy I met with today, I'm going to show him a house tomorrow at 1:30. It doesn't really fit the schedule, but I can make it work. And so you do that, you make you make those things. So for James Whitfield and Luther James Insurance, Nedvonne Fresh, with his FreshFold Laundry, I am your host, Laban Marsh, with Broker Than You. But for Steve, I am going to say, if life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Throw 2 oranges back at life, or back at Steve. But no, great being with you guys. And Steve says as soon as we log off, this thing will stop recording. So thank you guys for being here again. I know Steve will get us connected for next week. I now see it says Broker Than You, the Posse. I like this posse. We get some good collaboration going from these areas. But sincerely, I appreciate you guys. Stay positive. I can't wait to see you next week. But we'll talk to you guys soon, man. Be well.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.
Later.
All right. Thank you, guys.